Things didn't work out right from the start. As soon as he firmly decided to go, some difficulties and obstacles began. First of all, at work. He worked mostly remotely, but 2 or 3 days a week he had to appear in the office for approvals, solutions to urgent issues, and so on. And just now, when Oleg decided to finish another project by Friday and add to the legal weekend a few days off, the chief stood on the fumes. From next Monday we are scheduled to meet with a new customer. Very important and money. I didn't tell you in advance, so as not to jinx it, but now that everything is agreed, keep it in mind and take it into account. You are our leading specialist, so your presence in the office is mandatory. Finish your project this week, and we'll start a new case on Monday. But I have to leave urgently on a personal matter. Hand in your project early, and you can be free until Monday. That's it. The matter is closed. Waiting for the project. Oleg swore, but it was useless to argue. Of course the chief valued him, but not so much that because of his personal plans to disrupt the contract with an important customer. Now he would have to switch on turbo mode to deliver the project no later than Wednesday, and on Thursday morning to fly to Peter. Almost 4 days. That's something. Putting aside all considerations, he plunged headlong into his work. This unusual correspondence had started a couple of months ago. At that time he was also sitting at home, trying to finish another project. He couldn't concentrate. Then the chief called, demanding a detailed progress report. Then Nastya needed to urgently and immediately solve some economic issues. Then she went out for groceries, and the twin daughters stayed with him. Usually the girls found something to do themselves. They knew that Daddy could not be touched at work, but this time something went wrong. One or the other constantly came to him with complaints about each other, then made peace, and began to run with squealing all over the flat. Then from the kitchen there was rumbling and crying. It was necessary to run there and take action. At some point Oleg could not stand it, and just yelled at his, in general, favorite daughters. Just then Nastya showed up and jumped on him, defending the children. Oleg has already, as they say, bitten the bit, so gotten wife. What am I doing here, playing dancers or watching football? I work, earn money. For you I earn. And you know very well that I need conditions for work, so that I can concentrate and not think about other things. But they're children, Olegka. You can't do that. Children need to be brought up. Couldn't you instill in them that they should sit quietly while you're away? And then solve all their problems with you? They miss you. They want your attention too. And you're at the office, you're away from the office, you're at home at your laptop. I realize that it's work, but at least before going to bed, you could give your daughter some attention, even for half an hour. In normal times, he would have recognized that his wife was right about something, and she would have spoken more calmly, but now they were getting angry and fighting. In the end, he closed himself in his room, slamming the door, and Nastya and the girls left, writing a short message. We went for a walk. You can work while enjoying the silence. By the law of meanness, now that he had a chance to work in peace, nothing worked, his thoughts scattered, he couldn't concentrate. He gave up on the project and started mindlessly browsing social networking sites and socializing sites, hoping that he would soon calm down and be able to work normally. On some forum he met Alina. At first they just chatted about nothing, then the girl complained that she couldn't understand some of the working points. As it turned out, they had related specialities. He was happy to help her understand, especially as it was a very basic level for him. Alina thanked him profusely, sent him a scan of a lip print in pink lipstick with a playful signature hinting at further acquaintance. They chatted a bit more about nothing, then she sent a photo with a laconic caption. "It's me. Hello from Peter." The photo showed a very pretty girl in a light, short summer dress, standing on the embankment, against the background of the famous cruiser Aurora. Oh, pretty, if of course it is she and is, thought Oleg. In response, found his photo of a year ago with his daughters, sent Alina. Reasoned simply, if then something does not go well, the photo is quite neutral. It can be sent to anyone. His wife will not have claims. To Alina he immediately makes it clear that he has a family, and if the purpose of acquaintance from her side were serious plans, then let her mean that he is not free. And for a light flirtation, wife and daughters, no obstacle. The girl understood everything correctly and reacted adequately. Your girls? Oh, how cool. All in you. Then we chatted as usual without getting into the thick of it. It's been like that ever since. Sometimes Alina would write, asking for clarifications on work, and then we would communicate informally again. He also wrote when he had the opportunity. Soon Oleg realized that he could not do without this correspondence. He kept it in a special chat room, where the entrance was password protected. Once asked permission to call. The girl gave her phone without hesitation, and a day later he chose a moment when Nastya and the girls were not at home and called. Alina's voice turned out to match her appearance. Soft, charming, very sexy. We talked about nothing, but all the time there were some hints, questioning intonations, silent pauses. Well, are we going to talk about nothing? Soon she herself suggested a video call. You probably think that I'm posting photos of my daughter, but I'm old and ugly. He assured that he had no such thoughts, but supported the idea of a video call with enthusiasm. Just on Saturday, Nastya and the girls were going to her mum's, and Oleg wrote to Alina. Saturday at 12 o'clock is suitable? Sure, I'll be waiting for your call. That day he waited until his wife and daughters not only leave, but also get to his mother-in-law. He called Nastya on some trifling matter, and asked if they got there. Then he hesitated a little, and dialed Alina's number. She answered immediately, as if she had been sitting next to the phone and waiting for his call. They established a video link, and Oleg was simply dumbfounded. There was no doubt, this was the same girl from the photo. Only even more attractive, sweeter, sexier. They talked about some trifles, but it was not about words. Oleg was quite experienced in terms of relationships with women, and here he clearly saw that Alina sees him as a desirable man. Looks, body position, gestures, intonations. Everything said that the girl, if not in love with him, then ready for a close relationship. He too could hardly contain himself. He wanted to throw everything away, rush to the airport, take the next flight to Peter, break into Alina's flat, and... With great difficulty he managed to turn the conversation into the former calm direction, and soon to finish it. Then he sat in an armchair for a long time, cooling down, remembering not the conversation itself, but the atmosphere of mutual attraction that had arisen between them. He realized that he had fallen in love like a boy, and was ready for any madness. He hesitated for a few days, deciding to call Peter and offer to meet, but Alina herself resolved his doubts by sending a message. I want to see you in person, not online, and not on the phone. Come to me. It's nice in Peter now. White nights, beauty and romance. I hope you can get away for a few days. If you want, call me when you get there. I'll meet you. Don't worry about accommodation. I have a spacious flat, there's plenty of room. And the lip print again. Wow, so frankly with him did not behave with any girl, and Alina is very good in appearance, and hardly offended by male attention. Did she really like him so much that she was the first to make such an unequivocal proposal? However, now such times that girls often take the initiative. And it is clear that nothing serious they cannot be, if it was a matter of wanting to marry. She would easily find a couple in St. Petersburg among single guys. With her looks, a flat and a decent job, it wouldn't be a problem. Maybe he's being set up. There are cameras in the flat, then he'll get a letter with video footage and an offer to pay a couple of million to keep the video off YouTube. It's theoretically possible. But for such an elaborate operation, he was too insignificant a target. Not a millionaire, not a holder of state secrets, not an MP or politician. Such a video, if it appeared online, would only spoil his relationship with his wife. Neither his career nor his reputation would be affected. In the end, he put aside his gloomy thoughts and began to prepare for his trip. However, the very difficulties and obstacles began. He worked like a hard laborer to make it on time, but the customer had set himself a previously agreed deadline and was in no particular hurry, not really wanting to speed things up. In the course of the work, Oleg had important questions. He began to clarify them with the customer. He did not immediately respond to messages, did not react enthusiastically to his calls. But in the end, Oleg managed to finish everything by Wednesday evening and hand over the finished project to the customer. He took a day off. The chief strictly warned that on Sunday evening Oleg was at home, well rested, and at 10 o'clock on Monday morning he came to the office, cheerful, fresh, charged with positivity. And now it was necessary to coordinate his departure with Nastya. I finally finished the project. Well, good for you. Now you can rest? Well, how can I say? Tomorrow I fly to Rostov. I'll defend my project at the customers, and then I'm sure there will be a cultural program. So I won't be back until Sunday. That's a pity. The girls wanted you to take them to the water park. Until we can't, you can go by yourselves. They wanted to go with you. I'll do it next weekend. I'm tired as a dog. I'm going to eat, take a shower, and go to bed. I have to go to the airport tomorrow morning. Okay, go. Have a good flight. Most of all, Oleg was afraid that his wife today will want intimacy, and he was not ready for it. All his thoughts were occupied by Alina. Fortunately, Nastya did not claim him that night, and he fell asleep before she went to bed. In the morning it turned out that the trouble was just beginning. For starters, the taxi was delayed. An unforeseen traffic jam due to an accident. Good thing he'd taken time to spare. The delay wasn't critical. But they were moving slowly. Rush hour had taken over and there were traffic jams everywhere. Finally they got out of the city and drove faster. But that wasn't all. They had to make a diversion because of some burst pipe, then a flat tire. The driver quickly changed the spare, but that took time too. Do you realize I'm late for my flight? He couldn't take it anymore. If I miss the flight, I won't get to an important meeting. What can I do? The driver shrugged his shoulders. It's not my fault. In the end, they arrived, and Oleg ran to check in. Luckily, he had only hand luggage, a traveling bag. He managed just 5 minutes before the check-in time and wanted to relax. But then he got a new blow. The dispatcher announced that the flight was delayed due to weather conditions. Good thing I didn't call Alinka in advance. I didn't want to undermine her in the morning, he thought. He decided that he would call her directly from St. Petersburg, or even just turn up at her place without ringing. She would open the door and hang on him, soft, warm, sleepy. Oleg smiled at the pleasant dreams and began to wait for the announcement of landing. Here, everyone admires. The plane, unexpectedly said his seatmate in the waiting room. 2 hours and you are in another city. 8 hours, on the other side of the earth. Fast, clear, no delays, but only until you get to the plane, until you go through all these controls and checks, and then the flight will be delayed. The weather, you see, is not so. 21st century, and the weather still confuses the maps. Well, anyway, it's longer by train. It's almost an all-night journey. I'm sorry, what kind of train? The Sapson, for example, takes less than 4 hours. Not much longer than an aeroplane, snorted the interlocutor. Then why did you take a plane instead of a train? Inertia of thinking, such sluggishness. The man waved his hands. A stamp. If you want to go faster, go by plane. So I save time. Yes. Oleg became even curious. I've never thought about it that way. As you say, slanted thinking. That yes. The interlocutor was silent, and Oleg plunged into his thoughts. For some reason remembered grandmother Zoya, who always said that you should listen to the signs that the universe sends. If something does not go, sit down, take a break, put it aside. Maybe it is not necessary for you, or maybe you need, but not now. It's all nonsense, Zabobony, thought Oleg gloomily. And just at that time the loudspeaker came to life and announced the boarding of his flight. He entered the cabin, one of the first, snuck to his seat near the window and relaxed. He watched the passengers. Who would be his neighbor? Not small children. He remembered a recent flight when behind him sat a young mother with a boy of about 5 years old, who was already exhausted in the first hour of the flight and loudly capricious, and then began to kick his legs on the back of his seat. This time fate was favorable. and the neighbors in the seat and behind were ordinary adults. Next to him, a married couple about 40 years old. Behind him, young people, 2 girls and a guy. Quite adequate. In front, 3 guys, by the look of them. Sportsmen. The usual pre-flight bustle began. Engines howled. The crew commander was muttering something on the radio. The flight attendant, he liked the usual name, stewardess much better, showed how to use the oxygen mask, then went to check whether everyone was fastened. They took off. Oleg watched with pleasure in the porthole for rapidly decreasing buildings, which soon became quite tiny, distinguished familiar silhouettes of residential areas, forests and parks. Then the plane flew over faceless fields, the sky was covered with clouds, and he leaned back in his seat, covering his eyes, falling into a light slumber, and anticipating a beautiful love adventure. I've got the right idea. I'm going to go straight to her house. I wrote that I'd be there on Thursday morning, but I didn't specify the time, so she'd be waiting for me. But I don't think I'll get her out of her warm bed, until we fly, and until I get there. Anyway, it doesn't matter. She wrote clearly that the flat was big enough for me, and she acted very appealing. They are adults, they understand why they met, and most likely everything will happen on the first day. Oleg smiled. I wonder what Alina is like in bed. Judging by her appearance and looseness, not a novice in such matters, surely it will be interesting with her. On the contrast, suddenly remembered Nastya in the first time of their acquaintance. She was also beautiful, but she was very shy and inexperienced. She didn't even know how to kiss. She blushed when he tried to touch some cherished places, though she didn't withdraw his hand. There was a charm in it too, but still, at first Oleg lacked reciprocal actions from her side. However, soon he managed to awaken a woman in her, and everything began to work out. But immediately he found in her a loyal friend, an excellent hostess, delicate and indispensable assistant. And if at first he treated her a little indulgently, then soon caught up in a new feeling, and could not think of himself without Nastya. She did not scold him on trifles, tried to extinguish the irritation with which he often came from the office. Then he did not work remotely. She was surprisingly able to make a delicious dinner out of nothing. They called it Irish stew. Always smiling, understanding his mood, affectionate and non-conflictive. How happy she was when she found out she was pregnant. Carried and toxicosis and double weight, never complaining, and refused him in intimacy, only if it was quite bad. He valued her very much and took care of her, tried not to dwell on marital pleasures, and during his wife's pregnancy never went to the left. Some alienation began when their twin daughters were born. Nastya completely, with his head immersed in maternal cares, and, although also tried not to refuse her husband, even in the most intimate moments, was not with him, and near the daughters. He did not understand this. His girls also loved, but reasonably, in a masculine way, leaving a lot of free space in the soul for other things. Then he cheated on her for the first time, also on a business trip, with a young accountant from a partner organization, after a corporate party about the project delivery. Then he had a few more affairs, the same casual, non-committal. But when his daughters grew up, he and his wife resumed their previous intimate relations, and soon he would not even be able to remember the names of these casual girlfriends. It was just, roughly speaking, a physiological outlet. It was different now. He wanted this particular girl, anticipated the pleasure not only from the upcoming physical intimacy, but also from the accompanying entourage. The darkness of the bedroom. I wonder how they will sleep, in complete darkness, or with a nightlight. What words she likes to hear, and what she will whisper to him, and many other nuances, pleasant and exciting imagination. But why did he go for it so easily? It is not to say that he and Nastya had critical disagreements and they bored each other. It's just that they wanted something new? Or rather, a new girl? Okay. Enough reflection. What's done is done. It's not halfway done. He leaned back in his chair again and began to imagine in detail how he would spend these 3.5 days. Suddenly the plane plunged into a pit and his stomach chilled. Then the plane started to shake, and he looked out the window. The wing was clearly vibrating. There was a complete impression that the car is about to fall to pieces and fall to the ground. Oleg remembered an article on some website which described similar phenomena, and the author reassured that the structure is strong, in the air will not collapse, and the wing is specially designed so that in the case of overloads, begins to vibrate to avoid breakage. Then the plane shook very hard, the engine switched off and the liner began to fall. The stewardesses, frightened themselves, tried to calm the passengers and stop the panic. Oleg for some reason took what was happening calmly. Probably it is necessary. He will not have time before death to do something stupid, will remain faithful and decent husband, old sins do not count. Without him the family will not be poor. Nastya has a sought-after profession, will have to, however, work at full strength. It was good that he had insured his life for a large sum. A plane crash was an obvious insurance case, and there would be no delays in payment. He saw before him a picture of their usual life. Nastya in a checkered apron with a picture of Matroskin the cat fiddling around the cooker, and he stood in the kitchen doorway and admired her. The plane shook again, but the engine started and hummed quietly. The wings gained lifting power. The flight continued. The stewardesses became cheerful and the passengers became animated. When the plane landed, there was loud applause and shouts of joy. Oleg was the last to leave the plane and went out of the terminal building to the taxi stand. Without bargaining, he threw to the driver, "Moscow railway station," sat down on the back seat. Passing some church, he crossed himself and muttered, "Forgive me, Lord. I understand everything, thank you." The driver glanced at him in the rearview mirror, but remained silent. Then Oleg connected his phone to the mobile internet, ordered a ticket for the nearest Sapsan to Moscow. He found Alina's coordinates, sent her a short message. "I'm not coming, I'm sorry." Collected all her contacts, added her to the blacklist. "I apologize to God, I apologize to my failed lover too. I'd sooner go home, ask Nastya and the girls for forgiveness." "When will we arrive?" he asked the driver. "In about 20 minutes, he replied. "We have time to spare." Oleg smiled. "Please don't drive too fast. Be careful. I absolutely need to get home today."